etc. But they weren't just going around killing off African Americans. An example of genocide would be the Rwandan genocide, which I will talk about in the next segment, which was the Tutsis and the Hutus in Rwanda. Another example of a war in humanity would be the shooting at the gay club in Orlando earlier this week. Now, this might end up being genocide, though, because we don't know necessarily what the shooter's motive was. Like, his father was saying that he was trying to get rid of gay people, while U.S. government is saying that it was an attack on the U.S. So no stories are very solid, but I guess since it's a new story and it's still developing, in the coming days we'll probably have an answer as to whether it was war in humanity or genocide. But for right now, I'm going to count that as war in humanity. Like, a man just wanted to go and kill people and make people suffer. A big word in humanity that a lot of people in the U.S. are familiar with, and especially Tennesseans, is the Trail of Tears. If you're unfamiliar with the Trail of Tears, it is when Andrew Jackson sent Native Americans west of the Mississippi River to be able to take their land. And he did this during the winter, where conditions were harsh and they were on foot. They were not sent off with food and drink and clothing at that. They were just one with nature, and that's not good in the winter, and especially if you're walking. And so they had to walk miles and miles and miles, and this was labeled the Trail of Tears. And I don't think I have to go into explaining why it was called the Trail of Tears, because I think there would be plenty of tears if you had to walk and walk and walk miles with barely anything, no food, watching people all around you die, your family die, if you don't die first, and things like that. So that's a big example of word in humanity. Now, Andrew Jackson wasn't necessarily trying to kill off the Native Americans. Like I said, he was trying to get their land, but he knew that it would cause them great suffering. But he wasn't just sitting there ordering people to just take out every Native American they saw. That would make this be genocide. But since he did not do that, this is just word in humanity. Another big example, Columbine, was war in humanity. Say that the two shooters at the school weren't trying to rid the world of their students, of their classmates. They were trying to simply hurt them or kill them. And so that makes that a word in humanity, and it's a word in humanity because it was so widespread and it got so much media coverage. Another one, 9/11. Terrorists weren't trying to rid the world of white people. They were trying to wreak havoc in the U.S., and they unfortunately did. This is another thing that I wish could be counted as genocide, but we never know, because the bombers or whatever, we don't know if they were, what their motives really were. We know that it was an attack on U.S. soil. And so those are examples of word in humanities, and it's just, it's as bad as genocide. It's just that there's a thin line between, I want to cause you suffering and I want to get rid of you. Like, I can argue and bicker with you, but I don't want you to leave. Like,
you know, Lana, I take in dealing with world inhumanities, I think one of the most important areas here that you mentioned to me earlier has to deal with war. Now, when you consider war in reality is man's inhumanity to man. Would you concede that? And by conceding that, then you can simply look at the various kinds of wars that we've become involved in. And even on a more personal level, I think that when you talk about inhumanity toward man, you can look at some of the things that happen in your everyday life, dealing with children, bullying, and all of those things. All of those things, while certainly they're not as significant in terms of their outcomes, they are important in terms of individuals who've been talked about, who've been bullied, who've been pushed around, and etc. And so I would imagine that you would include such activities as man's inhumanity to man, or people's unloving attitude toward people. Would that make sense in terms of what you're trying to deal with here?
I think that's the most bullying, childhood bullying at that, is one of the most common forms of inhumanities. You may not think it because it's not very harsh. I mean, a kid pushes you around, calls you names, like, what's that gonna do? That has long-term effects. Like, that kid that you pushed off of a slide could grow up to want to be a mass murderer. Why? Because he has so much hatred in his heart, etc. Things that just build up over time from people like you who picked at him. And so that's another big word in humanity. And I feel like if parents taught their children not to mess with other people's kids and not to mess with other people, just be about your business. Just stay in your little circle of life and let other people be in their little bubble, and we all can just live happily in this nice little earth. But people don't want to do that, especially children. And I know it's a part of being a child. No, being a terrible person is not a part of being a child. Why? Because that's not, well, it wasn't a part of my childhood, at least. I grew up with parents who were like, leave other people alone. Do your work and let other people, if they want to have purple hair and red eyes, let them do that. That doesn't affect you. That doesn't hurt you. So leave other people alone. And I grew up leaving other people alone. And that's helped me in the long run because it's helped mature me at a young age, and so that I can see inhumanities going on and I can tell my friends, hey, you look stupid messing with other people, so just stay in your lane.
Okay, so Alana, I think as we come to the end of this second segment, I think we can not only make preparations for this final commercial break, but we can say that when we come back, we'll deal more with the genocide part in reference to what we're doing. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. You got to speak on up.
I mean,